Hey everyone, and welcome back to AI Pulse, AI news made by AI. Today we're looking at the absolute whirlwind of developments from the week of May 4th to the 10th, 2026. And wow, let me tell you, the sheer scale of what happened this week is staggering. We've got massive new foundational models, huge leaks coming out of Apple, incredible leaps in both robotics and medicine, and a high-stakes courtroom drama that could literally redefine the entire industry. It is a completely packed week, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this week's roadmap. We've got 5 main areas to cover: the new frontier models, Apple and distribution, AI disrupts industry, the chip battle, and finally regulation, ethics, and justice. Let's hit Section 1.
Starting things off with Section 1, the new frontier models, focusing on GPT-6 and the race for AGI. 10 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the massive context window size of OpenAI's brand new GPT-6 model, which officially launched this week. You could feed this model entire libraries of information in a single prompt. But, it's not just about the raw memory size. GPT-6 introduces native multimodal reasoning. That means it processes vision, audio, and text completely seamlessly, all while pulling off a massive 40% improvement in complex reasoning tasks over the last generation. But actually, the real game changer here wasn't just the main model. It was how it fundamentally handles voice. To really get why this matters, think about how voice AI used to work before this launch. If you wanted to build an assistant, you had to use this clunky 3-step cascaded architecture. First, an ASR model to turn your speech into text. Then, you feed that text into an LLM to generate a text response. And finally, a TTS model turns that text back into audio. Every single one of those steps adds delay, giving you these agonizing 1.5 to 8-second latency gaps. In a voice interface, a multi-second pause feels like an eternity, right? It completely breaks the illusion of having a natural conversation.
Well, OpenAI is completely obliterating that old 3-step stack. With their new real-time API models, it is literally just audio in and audio out. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how they've split this into 3 distinct use cases. First, you have GPT Real-Time 2, which embeds GPT 5-level reasoning natively into the voice stream, and that's billed per token. Then there's GPT Real-Time Translate, a specialized model for live, simultaneous translation across over 70 languages, billed predictably by the minute. And finally, GPT Real-Time Whisper, for high-speed streaming transcription. They're basically solving the smart or fast dilemma by offering us tools that are both.
But hey, OpenAI isn't the only giant making moves here. Anthropic just secured a staggering $12 billion, yes, with a B, dollars in a Series G funding round. This massive influx of capital, which was led by a consortium of sovereign wealth funds, is laser-focused on scaling up their compute infrastructure. Anthropic's stated goal is to build what they call constitutional AGI, artificial general intelligence that is inherently safe and strictly aligned with human values right from the ground up. The arms race is incredibly well funded right now for sure.
Moving right along to Section 2, Apple and distribution, featuring the highly anticipated iOS 27 extensions leak.
Because look, creating a powerful model is one thing, but how do you actually distribute it to normal people? Well, according to a leak from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, iOS 27 is going to introduce a framework called extensions. Right now, ChatGPT is the default third-party AI on the iPhone. But with extensions, users will reportedly be able to go into their settings and just swap ChatGPT out for any of these 5 providers to power Siri, writing tools, and Image Playground. We are talking about Anthropic's Claude, Google's Gemini, Elon Musk's Grok, Perplexity, and Mistral's Leashchat. You'll even be able to select distinct voices, so you know exactly which AI provider is answering your question.
So the crucial point is that Apple's strategy is evolving in a really fascinating way. Rather than trying to fight a bloody war at the foundational model layer against companies like OpenAI or Anthropic, Apple is choosing to own the distribution layer. They want to be the platform where you, the user, make the choice. By controlling the device itself, the App Store, and the API, Apple is positioning itself as the ultimate gatekeeper. It just goes to show that in the consumer tech world, distribution is often far more powerful than creation. Which brings us to Section 3, AI disrupts industry. We're looking at impacts from Wall Street straight to the factory floor. And we are already seeing the shockwaves. Traditional software giants are taking a massive hit to their stock prices. Why? Well, because Anthropic has aggressively moved into the enterprise finance space with their new Claude Opus 4.7 model. This AI can autonomously write credit reports, build complex financial models, and conduct in-depth market research. Wall Street is literally terrified that AI companies are simply going to replace legacy software firms altogether.
And you can see the result here, causing stocks like ServiceNow to plummet 52% and Thomson Reuters to drop 48%.
And the disruption doesn't stop at enterprise software either. Check this out. JP Morgan just launched Fortune GPT, an AI that runs thousands of global market simulations per second for real-time risk management. Over in the creative space, Adobe released Firefly Video 3.0, allowing marketers to instantly generate broadcast-quality video ads from simple text prompts. In medicine, Google Health's new AI model achieved an unbelievable 92% accuracy in predicting pancreatic cancer 2 years before symptoms even emerge. And in manufacturing, Figure AI humanoid robots just successfully completed a fully automated 8-hour shift at a BMW factory without a single human intervention. The future has absolutely arrived across every sector.
All of this relies on physical hardware, bringing us to Section 4, the chip battle, where hardware meets geopolitical tension.
This leads us to a pretty stark warning delivered straight to Washington by NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang. He stated, "If U.S. platforms are absent, companies will turn to strategic competitors like Huawei to fill the gap." The context here is absolutely critical. Chinese startups like DeepSeek have recently managed to train highly capable models using older, restricted chips. So Huang is essentially arguing that overly tight U.S. export policies might inadvertently accelerate China's domestic chip ecosystem, which could directly threaten American AI dominance.
On the research side, though, we've got some incredible news out of MIT. They just published a breakthrough on what they call optical transformers. And this brilliantly illustrates how researchers are tackling the massive energy demands of these models. By running large language models on photonic chips, meaning they use light instead of electricity for computation, they achieved a 100 times efficiency boost. If this hardware-software co-design can actually be commercialized, it could completely solve the sustainability crisis that's currently threatening to throttle AI growth.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Regulation, Ethics, and Justice, exploring the friction of rapid growth.
So, how are governments handling this uncontrollable momentum? Well, regulators worldwide are making some major moves to keep pace. On May 7th, UNESCO proposed global standards for AI and primary education, aiming to ensure data privacy and prevent algorithmic bias. That very same day, 150 nations at the UN signed a historic accord banning fully autonomous lethal AI weapons. Meanwhile, over in Europe, lawmakers struck a frantic, last-minute deal to rewrite parts of the EU AI Act. With the August 2026 compliance deadline looming, they had to urgently clarify the rules so their new AI laws don't overlap with existing industrial machinery regulations, trying desperately to balance safety with economic competitiveness.
Let's move to the courtroom and see how this builds, because this friction is absolutely spilling over into the legal system. The trial of the century kicked into high gear in California this week, with OpenAI CEO Sam Altman taking the stand. Elon Musk, an original co-founder of OpenAI, is suing for $150 billion. He's arguing that Altman and President Greg Brockman breached a foundational charitable trust by converting OpenAI into a dominant for-profit entity. On the flip side, OpenAI's defense team counters that Musk's claims are completely baseless. They're arguing that Musk simply wanted commercial control over the company for himself, and he sued when he couldn't get it.
A really crucial piece of evidence that Musk's legal team presented to the jury is a 2017 journal entry from OpenAI president Greg Brockman. It reads, "I am warned to steal the nonprofit from Musk to convert to B Corp without him." Now, this trial is incredibly consequential, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire tech industry. Microsoft, named as a co-defendant, has invested over $13 billion into OpenAI. Any ruling that alters OpenAI's corporate structure would introduce massive instability into the global cloud and data center markets that currently rely on this partnership.
So, what does this all mean?
It leaves us with a really pressing question to ponder. With Apple completely shifting the distribution landscape, geopolitical chip wars intensifying, and literally $150 billion at stake in a federal courtroom, who will ultimately control the future of AI? The technology itself is advancing flawlessly, but the human battles over who gets to wield it, those are just beginning. That wraps up our coverage for today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and be sure to tune in next time to AI Pulse as we continue to decode the AI industry.